Many managers don't become leaders, not because they're not smart or don't work hard, and definitely not because they didn't attend leadership training. They fail because they're missing the leadership mindset. You see, organizations spend a lot of time teaching managers leadership skills, how to communicate, run meetings, manage performance, have difficult conversations, etc. All those are important, but they don't address the internal character of the person. And here's the thing, if your leadership mindset is underdeveloped, if you don't know what it actually means to be a leader, then the skill set is not going to save you. Let me share with you a familiar story that happens in every organization. In fact, one of the leaders I've interviewed went through this experience before he decided to truly become a leader himself. Someone in the team is a very strong performer as an individual contributor. You know, capable, reliable, productive, delivers results. So the organization promotes this person to become a manager. Makes sense, right? But after the promotion, within days, strange things start happening to the team. Team dynamics change. Morale drops. People become quiet in meetings. Conflicts start appearing. Performance goes down. And everyone, the team themselves, the senior leaders who approve the promotion, the neighboring teams observing the slow emerging chaos, they all start wondering, what happened? After all, they promoted the best performer, right? The team should function as it should, only that it is not. So, what does the organization usually do? They send a new team leader for leadership and management training, how to communicate, run meetings, manage performance, have difficult conversations, etc. But the problem still doesn't go away. Why? Because leadership training usually focuses on skill set, but leadership success actually begins with mindset. Since 2018, I've been studying leadership and have interviewed over 250 leaders on their leadership experiences, looking at leadership frameworks, human psychology, organizational behavior, all these different ideas. One pattern keeps reappearing. The most effective leaders are defined by their character, how they think, respond under pressure, and who they are on the inside. Over time, I started simplifying leadership into a framework. Now, I have had a framework for leadership skill set, but not for mindset. And so I created the 4 domains of leadership mindset. And everything begins with the first domain, character foundation, who you are as a leader. And inside this foundation are 12 attributes that shape a leader's internal character and psychological stability. Here's the key leadership insight that I want you to take away right up front. Leadership is not just what you do, it's who you are. Who you are in the inside determines how you make decisions, how you treat people, how your team experiences your leadership. Let me be clear, we're always developing and growing, even a CEO. However, if you assume a leadership position and your internal character isn't sufficiently mature, then leadership problems will definitely appear. That's the reason why I've come across leaders who struggle with keeping team members accountable, motivating them, having the team collaborate as one, or ensuring they perform at an expected standard. So let's walk through the 12 attributes that form the character foundation of a leadership mindset. The first one is integrity. Integrity simply is what you say is what you do. And I'm not talking about casual talk in the office pantry or banter over lunch or coffee. If you are having a one-to-one conversation or a team meeting, then mind your words. Your team or someone else is always watching you. That someone else could be your boss, team members from other teams, your peer leaders, or even external stakeholders. If you say something that is perceived with some degree of seriousness by your team, then they are going to hold you to it. For example, if you say you would look into it or ask the big boss, then go do it. If not, your team or that someone else will soon realize your words don't count for much. And if your words and actions can't be trusted, then what else can people trust about you? The second attribute is self-awareness. Self-awareness means you understand your own strengths, weaknesses, emotions, and how your behavior affects others. If you don't know how your behavior is affecting others, do you think your team is going to openly tell you? Some might, most won't. You have to realize that your strength such as being laser focused on outcomes, can be a weakness when it comes to having authentic or open conversations. If you don't realize that, then that's a problem. And most leaders tend to think that if the team isn't opening up to them, the team is the one with the problem. But often the team is simply reacting to the leader. If a leader lacks self-awareness, blind spots will appear. That's where many managers struggle, because blind spots can quietly damage the team culture and they don't even know why. The third attribute is humility. Humility means thinking of yourself less often, that you're willing to admit mistakes and listen to others. Humility doesn't mean no confidence. Rather, it means you're confident enough to not be easily threatened emotionally or psychologically. I recall interviewing one leader who shared that in his first leadership role, he mistakenly thought that as the team leader, he should be the one to come up with all the ideas and answers. That was a mistake he eventually corrected when he realized that his behavior was causing the team to not contribute and just take instructions. Leaders who are assured of themselves are comfortable saying, I might be wrong. I don't quite know. I don't have the answer. Let's go explore this. Without humility, leaders become defensive in words, actions, and behavior, lashing out on anything that threatens their ego. When that happens, the team will pick up on their defensiveness and they will do what it takes to protect themselves. Silence, silo behavior, speaking to the leader only when absolutely necessary. Now, before we continue, if you enjoy Leadership Explained simply like this, do consider liking and subscribing to the channel. It helps me continue producing videos like this. All right, let's continue. The fourth attribute is authenticity. Authenticity means you're genuine and being willing to reveal to others who you really are as a person. You're not pretending to be someone else just because you became a leader. There was a leader who I had interviewed who shared about a team member who wanted to take on more leadership opportunities. Her challenge in putting that team member forward was that his work and personal behaviors were in sharp contrast. At work, the team member was all serious. Outside of work, he was all play. The leader didn't know what to really make of him, and when she asked some key stakeholders about the same team member, they shared similar opinions. Teams can sense very quickly when someone is pretending, because as the saying goes, you can bluff some all the time, everyone some of the time, but not everyone all the time. If you're the sort of person who is all serious at work and all play outside of work, then let people know. Now, that's being authentic. The fifth attribute is courage. Leadership often requires making difficult, unpopular decisions and calls for uncomfortable conversations. Courage means willing to face those situations directly and not lead in a way that constantly seeks the validation of others. I interviewed a CEO whose one advice was to stop asking others to validate you and instead to set your own standard of excellence. His opinion was basically that if you achieve excellence in your work, then doors will open for you at work. If leaders lack courage, problems stay hidden. If you don't acknowledge that there's a problem and act on it, do you think your team will? Eventually, small problems become big ones. The sixth attribute is resilience. Leadership can be emotionally demanding. Projects fail, people disagree, sometimes you receive criticism. There was this one young team leader whom I was working with who wanted to know how to handle an older, more experienced team member. I told him the key is resilience, to recover when mistakes are made and to continue leading. You are in the leadership position because someone else saw the potential in you. Leadership is not easy in practice because you have to lead well every day and you will make mistakes. There will be things about leadership that you will not know. Hey, I've been working with team leaders and heads of departments since 2018, and there are still many things about leadership that I don't know. Here's the thing, without resilience, you can easily become discouraged. And if you become discouraged, do you think the team is going to stay focused on their work? If you need to take a break and recover, go somewhere, find someone and recover. Because if the team sees you losing your nerves and become unstable, they'll feel it and you can count team performance and morale out of the door. The seventh attribute is growth mindset. Growth mindset means you see challenges as opportunities to learn. Leadership is not something you master once and then you're done. It's continuous development. Every successful leader has growth mindset. What differs is the rate of growth. A leader with a slower rate of growth could mean leading in the same way for years with few improvements over time. A leader with a higher rate of growth who keeps developing new ways of leading over time. The former might say leading a team was easier 10 years ago. The latter might say we have to move with the times. The challenge is that without growth mindset, leaders stop improving and then the team eventually outgrows them. If their rate of growth is too slow, then high performance in the team will outgrow them and leave. If you want to retain talent and sustain high performance in your team, then you have to keep growing as a leader. The 8th attribute is optimism. Optimism, or positivity, is the ability to maintain a constructive outlook even when situations are uncertain. This doesn't mean blind or toxic positivity. There was one leader I interviewed who worked in the luxury goods industry. He and his team had sales targets to meet. Whenever his team was struggling to meet their targets and were down-crested, he would be more positive. He had to be more positive than them. He learned that his positivity was something that his team would feed off to help them keep going to achieve their sales target. Being optimistic or positive means helping your team believe an answer, the solution or a way out is possible and just around the corner. As a leader, you must have optimism because without it, you only spread anxiety and your team will start feeling unstable once that happens and their performance will go down the drain. The 9th attribute is emotional maturity. Emotional maturity means you can manage your reactions under pressure. You don't overreact, explode in meetings, or make emotional decisions. Now, it doesn't mean you don't have emotions nor ignore them. In fact, you acknowledge the emotions in the room. This attribute is connected to the second one on self-awareness. If leaders lack emotional maturity, the team becomes nervous around them because the leaders become unpredictable and people stop speaking honestly or speaking at all. The 10th attribute is self-motivation. Leaders should be self-motivated, cannot depend on others to constantly motivate them. Now, it doesn't mean that they don't need recognition or acknowledgement from their boss. It helps because we're all human. What I'm saying is that a leader should have internal drive. After all, they are there to motivate the team. And if the leader themselves struggle to be motivated, then we have a problem. Self-motivation is essential, especially during difficult periods. If leaders lack self-motivation, the team starts losing momentum and progress slows. The 11th attribute is initiative. Initiative means taking action without waiting for instructions. Leaders move first. They don't wait for permission all the time. Of course, if the leaders are unsure, they should check with the team or with their own boss. What I'm saying is that when I work with middle managers, one thing they want from their frontline leaders is initiative. Initiative in spotting potential challenges, coming out with ideas, checking in with them before taking action if needed, etc. If leaders lack initiative, everything becomes slow and opportunities are often missed. The final attribute is intellectual honesty. It means you're willing to seek truth rather than defend your own opinion. Strong leaders care about getting the right answer, not protecting their ego. Remember, you're not competing with your team for your next promotion because you are running a different race from them. If the team wins, you win because everyone, including your bosses and senior stakeholders, know you're the one in charge. It doesn't matter who comes up with the idea, as long as action is taken and the problem is resolved. Without intellectual honesty, leaders become stubborn and insist on what they think. And stubborn leadership eventually damages decision-making, which negatively impacts the team's trust, relationship, and eventual performance. So, those are the 12 attributes that form the character foundation of leadership mindset. Integrity, self-awareness, humility, authenticity, courage, resilience, growth mindset, optimism, emotional maturity, self-motivation, initiative, and intellectual honesty. Here's the big takeaway. Many organizations try to develop leaders by teaching Skillset, how to communicate, manage performance, and run meetings. No doubt these are important, but Skillset only amplify who the leader already is. If the internal foundation is weak, No amount of skill set can fix it. And I want to say this is really no fault of the organization, because most organizations don't really know what attributes lead to the right leadership mindset that works for them. Which brings us back to the idea I always repeat in simple leadership. Leadership is simple, but not easy. It's simple because the attributes are clear. Just think about the consequences if any of them are missing in a leader. But it's not easy because leadership mindset requires personal development. Personal development requires building character, and that takes time. Having studied leadership since 2018, the biggest realization I've had is this. Leadership is less about being impressive and more about being stable in your values, thinking, and how you treat people. Because when leaders are stable internally, they can lead their teams with stability, and then performance improves naturally. Developing these attributes are what transforms managers into leaders. So I want to leave you with a reflection. Which of these leadership attributes do you think is most difficult to develop for you? Share your experience in the comments. I read them, and they often inspire topics for future simple leadership videos. And if this video helped you think about leadership in a simpler way, consider subscribing to the channel. Because my goal here is to make leadership easier to understand for aspiring leaders, team leaders, and his departments. I'll see you in the next video.